On page 32 of Hal Leonard, we run into another of the more interesting and slightly more difficult songs. Orally was probably the first one that was hard for its level, and then probably Greensleeves, which I avoided for a couple of reasons. It takes a long time to master, and there aren't many things that it teaches us that are directly in the book that I want to show you. This song, though, has a lot of elements of song learning that are really worth our exploring right now. When we go through this, I like to start off by having students identify these first 6 notes. I want to give you a second to do that yourself, so hit pause and maybe do that. Now you're back from pausing, and you see these notes descending in thirds. That means they're going from line to line to line. G, E, down to the first ledger line C. Then it's coming right back up, E, G, and then C again at the top. G, E, C, E, G, C is a C chord. The student doesn't have to actually finger the C chord to play this, but having its shape in mind really helps, and in fact I do ask them at least to start off by holding that C chord. Now after a second I'd like you to pause again. Find this exact lick again, and I would have the student do that while I'm sitting here supervising. So pause, you're back, you've unpaused, you found G, E, C, E, G, C. In mine it's easy to find because I'm using a repeat sign to come back to it. In yours it's in the second line, you'll see the exact same thing. What I have highlighted here right prior to it though, is before I get to my G, E, C, E, G, I actually have another chunk where it goes C, C, G, E, C, G, E, and then back up. So it's more C chord. The student's job then would be to play those parts. Make a C chord if you can. If not, at least think about it. G, E, C, E, G, C. I'll take over so you hear the song as you know I like to do. Now you can play the C's. These are in the middle of your second line. C, C, G, E, C. Then we're doing the same idea again near the end of your second line. And again, I can take over. Here we have it again in your version on line 4. In mine, it's just on this repeat. So we have C, C, G, E, C. Even these high E's are still a part of a C chord, so you could throw those in too, just for your awareness of the C chord. Now I'm here going into the G7. These C notes are part of a C chord. It's not worth covering a C chord to do it right now, but I might stop to have you play those just so you see that the C notes are part of a C chord. You see this little bird's eye, this dot with a curved line over it. That's called a fermata. And that adds time to that note. Usually an extra half of what that note is. So in this case, it's a quarter note, so you probably add about an eighth. These are pauses or breaths. In fact, the song from here to the end is full of these. The C note right before it is usually performed as one. So we come into that. Pause a little more on the B. Pause on this C usually. Pause on this high G, pause on the E. That's the kind of expression we hear when we hear this sung a cappella at anthems, and so most people want to put it in themselves. Rather than putting a fermata on every note that it shows up on, we can say it's rubato. This is a free-form style. Originally, rubato meant to rob. You're taking a little bit of time from one beat and adding it into the other. Now it just means to play freeform, just to stretch these things out however you like. I also want a ritardando, as we work our way toward the end of that, so we're slowing it down as we go. There's not a whole lot else to work on here in terms of tricks and tips, but we have all our same practice ideas. After you've worked out that one phrase over and over again, finding that C chord to outline your patterns at least 3 or 4 times, and then even later on you can see how the C chord holds them up. Each of these little phrases is playable and learnable as their own little entities, and they're worth looking at quickly anyway. So we get our C chord to start with. We leap up the scale and come down stepwise. E, D, C. Drop down to this E and come up stepwise. E, F sharp, G. Your sight reading should entail thinking like that. Oh, I see a little stepwise scale here. I see one coming up. So we could put a line down on that one, a line up on the other, showing it coming up. We land on those G's, leap up again in the C chord. Come down the scale, E, D, C, B, A, B, C. As you get back up to C, you're back in your C chord. So we have C arpeggios and little scale segments all over the place. This E we all sing longer, so that's actually going to be a dotted quarter note with this guy turned into an 8th note after it. I'll mark that off in black here. So that's an element of our phrasing often in this. This one section again then is an arpeggio in C. Scale walk from E down to C, up from E to F sharp to G, up in the C chord and all the way down the scale, back into this C chord. Still C chord on my here, it's a repeat. In your book it just continues. C chord, leap, and scale steps up and down, leap up and walk down, scale to arpeggio in C, walk up the scale, G is a scale tone, walk down the scale to D and back up the scale, F is the 7 on the G chord, walking down the scale in C to G chord with the B note, back up, walk up a scale to C, drop to E, walk up the scale to G, C's, down the scale to A's, scale steps from D up to F, pauses, walking up the scale from C, C, D, E, finally a leap that's resolving down to the C. F note on the G chord, another chord tone on G, resolving to the C note. So you can see this song has 2 themes, scale steps and arpeggios. We often leap from one to the next of these 3-note segments of your scales. Here we have a 5-note segment that lands on the A and walks back up. Here's the entire thing one time, fairly slowly, so you can play along. Again, not today, not when you're sight reading, but during the week of practice. Listen to it over and over, practice the hard parts, and hopefully get to this point in a few days or maybe a week. Pick up note on beat 3, so we count 1, 2, and start her up. 1, 2, 3, arpeggio. going to do a really super quick chord analysis with you here, but it's not going to be in depth in terms of teaching you all these concepts, but a quick peek at what's going on. We're in the key signature of C, so we have our 1 chord, C, our 4, the F, and our 5, the G. Those are your primary chords, the 3 chords that are supposed to be major, 1, 4, and 5. We see a good example of the relative minor here, so I've got the C, G, A minor, 1, 5, and 6, the relative minor. On this line, we can have another peek at them. The relative minor, A minor, is the 6. It's getting us toward a G and it goes through the D. We've seen this before, where D is supposed to be minor in the key of C. It's the 2 chord. But they've put in a D7. That's because it's a 5 chord from the key of G. In the key of G, it's the 5, the dominant chord. When we bring that into this key, it's called a borrowed chord. It's the secondary dominant, the D7 is leading to G. We've seen that all the way back to Aurelie and Au Clair de la Lune, where the D minor is changed to a D7 as a secondary dominant. So that explains that one very nicely for us. Here's the proper chord, the 2, the D minor, along this bottom line that's all diatonic, it's all in key. But to get to the D minor, we used an A7. We've already learned A's are supposed to be minor chords. They're the 6, the relative minor. So what explains that A7 is, again, it's a secondary dominant. In the key of D, D, E, F sharp, G, A is the 5. The 5 chord is major and it can have a 7 on it. It's the dominant 7. So we bring that in to set up the D. Here's the Fs, the A7, which you can hear brings tension to land on the D minor. So D7 is a secondary dominant, the 5 of G. A7 is a secondary dominant, the 5 of the D. And up here, we see the secondary dominant for the A minor. Just snuck in there once, the E7 chord. So you can hear that it's out of key as well. It's the 5 of A minor, the secondary dominant. Hear how it's out of key, lots of tension. The D7's out of key, leading to G, but we've settled back now. Here it comes again. Hopefully you can hear that extra color on the secondary dominant chords. We've got one of each. A minor, D minor, and E minor are the 6, the 2, and the 3 in the key of C, all minor chords. At some point they've all been turned into dominant 7 chords in this one because they're all leading down a 5th to another chord in the song. That concept of secondary dominance needs much more explanation in the future, but that's just why they're in there. If you practice the song and you hear them out of key, you can at least use that term, just label them so you can start getting used to it for now. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Have a good one, guys. See you later. Bye.